Hi, it's Ileana, and today I am going to be discussing DNA and genomic sequence profiling genetics. I have always been fascinated with genetics in terms of DNA and genomic sequences since I had worked in the Cybernetics Labs on Mars processing and testing DNA to make ET human hybrids. Recently, I had been given a gift for an Ancestry DNA kit. So I have learned the ethnicity estimates of where I come from in Europe. Ancestry uses autosomal DNA for scanning in someone's genes in order to determine ethnicity estimates. I downloaded my raw DNA from Ancestry and added it into Genetic Genie, which is a medical DNA database, in order to scan my methylation genes. So that was convenient for me, as I can just plug in the genomic sequence into the DNA scanner program and pop out the results. This reminds me of the good old days in the Cybernetics Labs, connected to the Mars basis on Mars, where DNA codes would get me instant results within an hour, as long as I had the proper genomic sequences that comes from raw DNA from whatever subject I was studying. There are portable genetic scanners in the Cybernetics Labs where your hand is scanned on the portable DNA scanner. Your genomic sequence is downloaded into the scanner, and then your DNA is processed to look for mutations or polymorphisms to check the status of genetic health. In these Cybernetics Labs, it does not take 8 weeks to find out your genetic test results, as the technology allows for accessing quick results. And when you know the results of the genomic sequence and the whole entire genome of the DNA, when you do the scan on the portable DNA scanner in the Cybernetics Labs, that DNA can then be edited and fixed. So if you have any diseases, it can be cured by genetically editing your DNA to fix the genetic strands where the mutation is, or to fix the genetic sequence where the problem is in the DNA, because you can have one mutation or many mutations. DNA is large and vast, so the portable genetic scanner really does tell you accurate results within an hour. And then whatever mutations there are or diseases, it can be fixed with genetic editing. So what I did was I used the Genetic Genie, which showed me that I have mutations in the VDR Bsm gene, which is low vitamin deficiency, vitamin D3 deficiency. And here's a description of the VDR. Vitamin D receptor encodes the nuclear hormone receptor for vitamin D3. Low or low normal vitamin D values are often seen in those with chronic illness and even the general population. Low vitamin D is related to a lot of neurological and immunological conditions. Vitamin D stimulates enzymes that create dopamine. VDR-TAK and VDR Bsm are usually inverse from each other. So if there is a plus VDR TAK, there would be a minus VDR Bsm. However, this is not always the case. It has been clinically observed that the body may have trouble tolerating methyl donors with a COMT V158M plus and a VDR TAK plus status. VDR TAK minus individuals may already have higher levels of dopamine, and combinations of variations COMT and VDR TAK can lead to a wide range of dopamine levels. Those that are VDR TAK plus plus and comp minus minus may have lowest dopamine levels. Note, some have pointed out that VDR TAC is reported backwards since majority of medical journals report a different risk allele or use different notation. These arguments are well founded, but Genetic Genie reports this way so results are compatible with existing methylation nutrigenomics literature. Many claims about VDR methylation are clinical observations. There are no medical studies to support some of the observations. So I've always known that I had vitamin 3 deficiency, and I actually take a vitamin D3 liquid supplement every day. I take about 4 to 8 drops in food during the morning. So for me, it wasn't shocking to find out that I have a vitamin D3 deficiency in the VDR Bsm++ mutation, that it was confirmed through Genetic Genie. So that wasn't surprising or shocking to me. I already knew that. So it just confirmed something for what I'm already taking supplementation, so I don't have low counts of vitamin D3, so that I'm not mentally fatigued and not physically fatigued, because before I had been, before it was discovered that I had vitamin D3 deficiency, I had just taken a blood test. That was done like 10 years ago, where I'd taken a blood test and it was determined that I had low vitamin D3 counts, and ever since I've been taking vitamin D3 liquid supplementation with my food, and it works pretty well because I'm no longer tired and I have more energy. So it's very good to be able to take the natural organic vitamin D3 supplementation and actually be able to work on that. Even though I have a plus mutation for it, that I can actually work on and fix pretty easily with the vitamin D3 liquid supplements that I take. The other mutation that I have is in the MAOA R297R gene, which is regulating neurotransmitters and how emotions are expressed. MAOA, monoamine oxidase A, is a critical enzyme involved in breaking down important neurotransmitters such as serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. Males only have one allele since the gene is inherited through their mother, since it is located on the X chromosome. Only females can be heterozygous plus/minus for this mutation. When a plus MAOA mutation is combined with a plus or plus minus COMT V15-8M mutation imbalances in neurotransmitters may be more severe. These imbalances can potentially lead to neuropsychiatric conditions and symptoms such as obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, mood swings, and aggressive and/or violent behavior. Note, Genetic Genie reports the wild type as the defective variant, as doctors have clinically observed that patients with methylation problems, especially those of autism, often have trouble breaking down neurotransmitters. The high activity version of MAOA, which is represented as minus, can contribute to major depressive disorder. The significance of this SNP should be interpreted with caution. I have the plus mutation of MAOA, so it actually creates low enzyme of MAOA, so I would have more transmitters, higher levels of serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters. So they would be higher for me than the usual with a plus mutation, like what I have. psychically, I had scanned the MTHFR C677T, MTHFR A1298C, and the MAOA MAOA R297R genes to see if I had any mutation in those genes, because my emotions can be aggressive and volatile. That's something I've noticed, and I've had anxiety for a while now, unexplained anxiety that just comes out of nowhere, or if there's problems and situations I can't solve, the anxiety is through the roof then. So because of experiencing unexplainable anxiety, I psychically had to scan the methylation genes, because those are the genes that are usually responsible for anxiety, depression, aggressive or volatile behavior. I don't know how I psychically knew that, but I did. So I scanned those genes and I saw that the MAOA R297R was a + mutation in myself. My psychic scan revealed that I had a double homozygous mutation, which is the ++ in my DNA concerning that gene, that particular gene. It would have cost me 2,000 Canadian to do methylation genetic testing if I had to request it with genomic sequencing from, let's say, a company like Blueprint Genetics in Finland, because they had done my hemiplegic migraine genetic testing, and that came back positive for FHM2, familial hemiplegic migraines type 2 with severe paralysis. However, since I have part of my autosomal genomic sequence of the raw DNA from Ancestry DNA, so with a medical database like Genetic Genie, I could upload the raw DNA into it and get a scan readout of what mutations I might have. I already knew psychically I had the MAOA R297R mutation, and I was able to easily confirm that with a simple raw DNA check by uploading it to Genetic Genie. When you have access to your raw DNA genomic sequence file, if you can find the right medical DNA database to scan your genes into, can tell you a lot about your genetic health. For me, learning about my ethnicity heritage was nice, but what I was mainly interested in was the autosomal raw DNA file that I could work with to learn more about my gene health, and looking at the psychic probe into the MAOA R297R mutation. I also suspect my dad is positive for the MAOA R297R mutation, because he has aggressive tendencies and anger issues sometimes. So, it's I think it's genetically inherited from the dad's side. My medical knowledge about genetics and how to work with DNA from my experiences working in the Cybernetics Labs on Mars, splicing and transferring DNA into genomic sequences, creating the ET human hybrids, is useful information that I have been able to apply here on Earth in terms of examining my current genomic sequence in DNA health through the portion of the autosomal DNA, raw DNA, that I was able to download from Ancestry. If you know the science of how to work with something, you can apply it to almost anything to find out what you need to know. Like, for example, I used the gift of the Ancestry DNA kit that was sent to me to determine my ethnicity heritage estimates. I'm European. I'm from Europe, so I'm predominantly European. That's what came in the results. But for me, it was the raw DNA, autosomal DNA, that was truly the gift, because I was able to, like I said, put it in Genetic Genie for the methylation testing and confirm what I already psychically knew, that I had a MAOA R297R mutation ++. So that was a very interesting experiment for me to be able to do. Not just find out my breakdown of my ethnicity heritage, but also to find out more about my medical health and to actually get an answer for why I could be more aggressive than I should be and why I get unexplainable anxiety from almost nothing, where there shouldn't be any anxiety, but I do feel it. I also have bouts of insomnia sometimes. That's unexplainable. I just suddenly get tired out of the blue. So this mutation explains quite a lot. I'm not saying I'm blaming everything on the mutation, that it's causing all of my problems. It also depends on what environment you were raised in, how you are as a person. So a lot of these factors can determine how you handle stress, why you get anxiety or depression, but the MAOA R297R gene mutation does contribute to these factors. So how neurotransmitters are regulated. So for me, it's low enzymes. So I have too much of serotonin, neuroepinephrine, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters. So, it's once you know something, you can be a little bit more mindful of how you handle situations, perhaps. So now that I've confirmed the mutation is there, what I can do is be more mindful of my emotions and how I process emotion. If I end up in some kind of a problem-solving situation that's very difficult, to just not let my emotions get out of hand, to try to solve the problem in a calmer manner and peaceful solution, and not get all aggressive and anxiety-ridden and act out. So there's ways of problem solving without, just letting your emotion take over. So I need to be more cognizant of doing that, and be more cognizant of working on my mind health and my emotional health. And that I don't need to feel so much anxiety over nothing. So really work on those things a bit more and decrease my anxiety stress levels, because I don't need to be anxiety ridden over small stuff, and work on that. Just work on mind health and emotional health. So that's kind of, for me, I find it comforting knowing that now I at least have some understanding of what's contributing to my weird anxiety and mood swings sometimes. So now that I know, I can better manage it, I think, and I'll be working on that. This is my ethnicity estimates from Ancestry DNA, and they are that of European Jewish, 50%, which includes countries of Belarus, Hungary, Lithuania, Latvia, Moldova, Poland, Romania, and Ukraine. There's also the Eastern Europe and Russia breakdown, which is 46%, including countries of Belarus, Czechia, again, Hungary, Moldova, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Ukraine. As well, there is 4% of the Balkans, including countries of Bosnia, Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Romania, and Serbia. So Herzegovina, so that's pronounced Herzegovina. So I've already known that I'm predominantly Jewish because my father is Jewish and his parents were Jewish. So being 50% Jewish does not surprise me. It does not surprise me that I come from European countries, that my ethnicity estimates are all European. None of that surprises me because I know we've had relatives from Poland, Ukraine, Russia, so that I already knew. The Balkans, that was a bit interesting, that I didn't expect, but again, what I predominantly knew about my family heritage was that I'm European Jewish, that I was born in Ukraine, I had roots in Russia, and I had roots in Poland. So that I knew. That wasn't anything surprising, and it did show up on these Ancestry DNA ethnicity estimates predominantly. What I did enjoy from going to the Ancestry DNA website and looking at the ethnicity estimates is their maps are very good. It shows you the percentages of where you are and primarily the countries from where your ethnicity comes from. So they do give you that breakdown, which I enjoyed looking at. And for the European Jewish, it's primarily located in Belarus, Hungary, Lithuania, Latvia, Moldova, Poland, Romania, and Ukraine. That's where the 50% of my Jewish ethnicity comes from. And I would say yes, 50%. I always knew I was half Jewish. On my father's side, my mother is not Jewish. My father is from his family's side. His mother and his father, full Jewish. So I got 50% of that ethnic background. And I knew that, so that wasn't surprising. The countries were interesting. I knew that Poland was on the list and Ukraine. I didn't know that there was Belarus, Hungary, Lithuania, Latvia, Moldova, and Romania. But I did know that we predominantly came from Slavic countries. So that was interesting that these countries are there. And you get to see that in the ethnic estimates. So this is the Eastern Europe and Russia ethnic estimates. It's 46%, and primary countries located in was Belarus, Czechia, Hungary, Moldova, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Ukraine. So Ancestry DNA has a huge database of ethnic countries, and it's one of the largest databases, actually, DNA databases for ethnicity estimates. As well, there's 23andMe. They're equal to Ancestry DNA. So if you're very interested in finding out your ethnicity, I highly recommend Ancestry DNA and 23andMe. 23andMe also gives you health reports. It's a bit more expensive of a kit to buy, but it's $200 and something instead of $129. So Ancestry DNA sometimes has sales. For what I've noticed, in Canadian dollars, the kit costs $79 to $99. 23andMe is always $129 Canadian. The Ancestry DNA kit was given to me as a gift for an experiment, and so I highly appreciate the gift. And I also went and explored my health, the health of my DNA on my own, because again, I have the Cybernetics Labs experience of working with DNA and portable DNA scanners, so I know that I could always use raw DNA file, which comes from Ancestry in a text file, in a zipped text file. It's called Ancestry DNA text file that you can easily download once you get your DNA results of your ethnicity estimates. So for me, it was quite easy knowing what to do with the raw DNA file and where to upload it to look at my psychic sense of what I already knew, that I had a consistent mutation, the MAOA gene and the methylation genes, because I knew it was that one specifically. So for me, it was just about a matter of getting the raw DNA file and uploading it to Genetic Genie to have a look at that under the methylation genes. So I have the same allele, basically. Plus is the same allele. It's a copy of the same gene from the mother and the father. That's why it's a plus. So my parents could theoretically have that mutation as well in the MAOA gene. This is the Balkans, 4% of my ethnicity, and the estimates for it, and the countries primarily located in are Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Romania, and Serbia. So 4% of my DNA and my ethnicity estimates comes from the Balkans. So, and again, it's what I like about Ancestry DNA is the maps are thorough. You could also read information about the regions if you want to know about the Balkans and about other parts of the maps where your ethnicity estimates come from, the countries that are mentioned. You could always read about the region and its history, and it also gives you a breakdown of the different centuries of the migration periods of your ancestors, where they primarily lived from start to end and where they've migrated to. So that's something interesting that Ancestry DNA has beside the map. A legend, if you click about this region, if you click on that, a legend appears with all the centuries of where your ancestors lived in those particular countries and where they migrated to from those countries to another continent. So that's interesting information to look at with Ancestry DNA about your migration patterns and the history of the regions of where your ancestors once lived. 23andMe also has that, and 23andMe also gives you your haplogroup on your mother's side and your father's side. Ancestry DNA does not give you a haplogroup. So that's something Ancestry might think about adding in at some point. It would be nice to know your haplogroup of your specific ancestry group, of where you come from, and also 23andMe tells you how much Neanderthal DNA you might have or not have. Ancestry does not do that. So it's just, I did want to learn about 23andMe as well. Since I already did the genetic testing with Ancestry DNA, I wanted to compare those two, what the differences are. Both Ancestry DNA and 23andMe have relative matches, like second cousin, third cousin, brother, sister, if your DNA profile of you doing the DNA testing is on Ancestry DNA. And on 23andMe, you can be matched to close relatives, and you actually get their names as well. You can see their names and can contact them. So I did have a look at the relative finder on Ancestry DNA, and it matched two second and third degree cousins and fourth degree cousins by my grandmother's on my dad's side, her last name. So it was interesting to see potential second and third and fourth cousins, females, in the database, because they had done a DNA test as well, and they matched up in being third, twice removed cousins or fourth removed cousins. So that was interesting to see as well. So this is the results of the Genetic Genie for the methylation profile of those genes. I had done that on September the 12th, 2020, uploading my raw DNA into Genetic Genie. And if anybody ever wants to look at their methylation genes and their detox genes, you can just go to geneticgenie.org to do that. So for me, it was the VDR Bsm, vitamin 3 deficiency, and it was a ++, which means that it's one of the alleles from my mother and my father. It's the same allele from their DNA. I have 2 copies of the same allele. So that's a ++, and the MAOA R297R mutation, also ++ with the same alleles. So I get the same copy of the same gene from my father and my mother for that. And for the vitamin D3 deficiency, I get the same copy of the gene from my mother's side and my father's side. That's what the ++ means. It's homogeneous mutation, 2 mutations. For me, the MAOA R297R RS6323TT, that means positive for warrior gene mutation. That was the most important one for me. And this is where emotions and moods are affected by the mutation, causing more aggression, anxiety, anger, and potentially depression. So methylation genes regulate various hormone and neurotransmitter stability, emotional well-being, and body functions. These methylation genes are also responsible for regulating the supplementation of vitamins and minerals in the body. If there are mutations in the methylation genes, then there is a disruption to the regulation of normal methylation, and people may experience vitamin D deficiency or emotional instability depending on which gene expression is affected by the mutation or mutations, because sometimes there could be multiple mutations. From what I know about methylation genes, raw DNA files allows you to upload your DNA into medical research databases like geneticgenie.org in order to check your genomic sequence for methylation and detox genetic mutations. DNA methylation is one of several epigenetic mechanisms that cells use to control gene expression for whether the genes are turned off or on, for whether there is a mutation or not. I found Genetic Genie to basically give me a good picture of what mutations I have in the methylation genes, and also there was one mutation in the detox genes, but I didn't want to put that in. I just thought that the methylation genes were more interesting, and I'm only describing the stuff in red because those are confirmed ++ mutations. They're confirmed mutations. They're in red. They're primary mutations. That's what that means. So I wanted to show you guys that so you can see what Genetic Genie looks like. And there's 5 pages to this report, and it describes all the different genes covered in the methylation test and the detox test. I only included the test results, and I've also already given you a description of the 2 gene mutations that I have and the genes responsible for them. So I'm not going to go and read every type of gene that Genetic Genie includes a description of. That's 5 pages. But I did want to share with you that if you do use Genetic Genie, you will get a description of all the genes. It's a thorough report, and I like that about Genetic Genie. I actually have not been able to find any other DNA medical database like Genetic Genie. And right now, Genetic Genie is for free, and you can give a donation if you would like to support them. Right now, it's free, but in the future, it might not be free. So I'm very lucky that I got to test it out and use it on September the 12th, 2020, to look at my genetics for methylation and detox genes. So in addition to Genetic Genie, I also typed into an internet search on Chrome, Google Chrome. I typed in the MAOA R297R R297R specific mutation and its coding sequence and the TT. I typed it all together, and I was able to find specific information about the MAOA monoamine oxidase A mutation, what it really is, because Genetic Genie gives you a general description, but if you want something more specific, you will have to look it up on the internet in a search engine with the gene name, the sequence number for the gene, and the mutation number. So you'll have to put that in, plus whatever number of alleles it is of the genome copy. So I typed that in, and what came up for the description of this particular mutation is reduced MAOA enzyme activity, leading to higher levels of neurotransmitters in the brain. And this is associated with outward anger, anxiety, and higher risk taking the warrior genotype. Vitamin B2, magnesium, and zinc have been shown to increase MAOA activity and may be beneficial for this genotype. So there are things that you can do if you have this type of a mutation by taking vitamin B2, magnesium, and zinc to help increase the MAOA activity. And that could potentially help lower the neurotransmitters so you don't have too much of dopamine, norepinephrine, and those neurotransmitters that are too high. There's potential to lower them by taking specific vitamins and minerals, which it states here. So it's good to know the information about the specific characteristics of your mutation, because these are considered epigenetics. So you can actually do something about helping yourself to improve methylation rates. If you do have a mutation in methylation genes, there are things that you could take, like other supplementation, vitamins, minerals, to somewhat stabilize the gene mutation and improve your neurotransmitters and hormone levels. For some of this stuff, you can actually balance it out if you know what you're doing with the information that you find. You can balance it out. So MAOA is a member of the monoamine oxidase gene family, whose enzymes catalyze the deactivation of monogenic neurotransmitters like serotonin, melatonin, noradrenaline, and also adrenaline. It also metabolizes dopamine, tyramine, and tryptamine equally with MAOB gene. MAOA is located on the X chromosome, so males only carry one allele inherited from their mother. We report results for males as homozygous, as they will not inherit a balancing allele. MAOA is nicknamed the warrior gene because variants are associated with anger and aggression. due to slower neurotransmitter breakdown, which effects may be amplified if COMT variants are also present. Conversely, a combination of wild alleles has been labeled the warrior gene, like worry, when you worry too much, associated with low blood due to rapid breakdown of neurotransmitters. So there's MAOA A and MAOA B mutations that people can have, and COMT, in addition with COMT mutations of those genes, which causes you not to be a warrior and aggressive, but causes you to be a worrier and to worry too much. So that's interesting to know, this type of information and what these genes do and what the mutations are and what you can do about fixing some of the side effects of those mutations, with some of the health suggestions that are recommended to work with to actually balance out the side effects of these genetic mutations, because again, these are epigenetics. Epigenetics are genes that can be balanced out and your health can be improved. Epigenetic genes do not necessarily influence your genetics to the degree that other major genes do. So for some genes, you can actually, like epigenetic genes, you can do something about it to help yourself and change your health, your genetic health and your physical health by some of these suggestions. And I did have to look deep on basically using Google search engine. I really had to dig on the internet to find this information. It took me 5 hours to find this particular information based on the mutation that I have for MAOA A. But I'm glad I found it because I actually do take magnesium already, and I do take vitamin B2. I don't take zinc, so I might just add zinc to my vitamin list of something to take, and supplementation, and see how things go. I also take vitamin B12, and I've noticed that my anxiety has decreased, and I don't have so much insomnia since I take vitamin B12, and I'm also not so tired. So taking a balanced supplementation of vitamins and minerals really is good for epigenetics, I find. So I just wanted to share this information with you and what I know about genomics and DNA profiling, because this knowledge I've had for a very long time, and I felt like I wasn't fully exploring this and wasn't fully sharing this information about what I know about genetics and what I've done with genetics and DNA sequencing. So I think this was time to share this information and explore it in more detail, since I had done the Ancestry DNA testing and I was finally able to work with the raw DNA file to answer some of my questions that I had and psychically looked into. So thank you so much.